Welcome everybody to Learn to Sew a Heating Pad from a Sweatshirt. My name is Dana and I'm going to be emceeing today's class. And I'm the editor of Fave Crafts as well. And so if you're not familiar with Fave Crafts, we are a website that shares free craft tutorials from all over the internet. We have a variety of free email newsletters broken down by interest, like Everyday Crochet and Trash to Treasure. You can sign up for any of our free newsletters at favecrafts.com. A few housekeeping items. We are recording today's webinar and we will email out that recording tomorrow. So keep an eye on your inbox for an email from Fave Crafts via Zoom with the link to that recording. And you can use the Q&A feature or the chat to ask questions, whichever you prefer. And I will be relaying those to our instructor today as we go along. Thank you so much to our instructor today. So today's class is sponsored by Highly Crafty. At highlycrafty.com, you'll find DIY tutorials, travel inspiration, and cannabis education conveniently located on the blog. You'll also find an array of clothing and accessories that are perfect for living the Highly life. Highly Crafty was started in 2019 by comedian, entrepreneur, and mom, Angela Stocker. Originally a YouTube channel featuring crafting sessions with comedians, the business quickly took shape when Angela noticed a lack of fashion-forward accessories for cannabis enthusiasts. In addition to retail, Highly Crafty has DIY tutorials, educational blog posts, and pop-up crafting events. Welcome, Angela. Thank you so much for teaching today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and share my love of crafting with everyone.
Wonderful.
All right. So if everyone's ready, we can get started. The first thing you'll need is your sweatshirt. I have just a regular sweatshirt. I did some little sequins bedazzling on this one, but any sweatshirt will work. It could be hooded, any kind of sweatshirt you have. The first thing you're going to want to do is take off the sleeve. So I'll show you here. When you have your sleeve, there's like a little seam you might notice down the middle. So when I did that, I actually used my seam ripper. I used my seam ripper to go ahead and rip along that seam to take off the sleeve. However, you can also just use scissors and cut it. You don't necessarily need to make it right on that seam. You're gonna sew it up. It's gonna be closed anyway, so whatever is best for you. But here I'm gonna go ahead and just cut it off today. Make it nice and quick, but I'm gonna cut it. I'm gonna try to get right on that seam, just so then you have a nice edge to work with. And you don't have to worry about shears. It can be any sort of scissor. That's kind of the Highly Crafty way, is make it work, boo. Okay, you got this. I believe in you and your crafting abilities. Okay, so it doesn't have to be straight cuts. Nothing needs to be perfect. We are out here crafting because it's fun and useful. All right, so get this cut. All right. So now that we have this cut, you'll just have your sleeve. And what I like to do, so generally what I do is I like the inside of the sweatshirt sleeve to be the outside of the heating pad, just because they tend to be a little bit softer, a little more plush, a little nicer. So at this point, you can decide, if you like the outside, if you have a fun pattern on your sweatshirt and you want that to be the outside of it, go ahead. But what I do is I'm going to leave it so that it's right side out. And I'm going to line up this bottom where the arm is, where your wrist would pop out, where your hand comes out. I'm going to line that up. And I'm going to pop a couple of pins in there just to make sure it's nice and even, so that when I sew it shut, it'll have a nice even line that we are sewing on. So I'm going to put it like this, have a couple of pins. I'm just going to pop in. And there's no defined like hem. If you want to do 1/4 of an inch, 5/8 of an inch, 1/2 an inch, a full inch, you can do whatever you want for your seam allowance. I tend to sew pretty close. You can see where I put my pins. So I'll probably sew pretty close to this edge just to give me the most amount of room to work with when I start adding my rice. But yeah, so we'll pin it like that. Have a nice little defined area. Let me move this out of the way and get the sewing machine. So at this point, you want to get your sewing machine ready. Again, I like to give alternative ways of doing projects. And this one is one where it's a little hard to use alternatives. Like normally I would say fabric glue would be something you could use if you don't have access to a sewing machine. But because heating pads normally get warmed up in the microwave, I don't really know how well the fabric glue would hold it. But if you're the type who likes to experiment, maybe you have 2 sweatshirt sleeves, so maybe you can make 2, see how one does with glue, sew the other one. But I would say a sewing machine would be best because since you're going to have rice, like small particles, and you don't want them to fall through, you want to make sure you have a nice tight stitch. If you are going to hand sew, I would say just make sure you do 2 rows of stitching. So do one row of stitching all the way across, and then do another row of stitching all the way across, just to be sure that it's going to stay in and that your rice isn't going to fall out. So yeah, if you are going to hand sew, do two takes, 2 passes, I guess, two rows of sews, 2 rows of stitches, 2 rows of sews. Do 2 rows of stitches if you're hand sewing. If you're using a machine, 1 will be just fine. Do make sure that it is a regular stitch, not a basting stitch, since those are a little wider and then you might have rice falling through. So I'm going to go ahead and start that. I'm going to do a simple straight line stitch all the way across here to make sure that the end of this is nice and sealed up. And again, I'm doing it on the right side of my sweatshirt because I want the wrong side of the sweatshirt to be the outside. So I'm going to start my stitch that's going to close up my, seal up my sweatshirt. I'm going to start that here.
Angela, what type of sewing machine are you using?
Oh, okay. So I have a Brother. It's a Brother SE600. So it does do embroidery. I haven't learned that part yet, but it does have a number of stitches, which are really cool. And you can adjust the stitch length. Like right now, mine is at 2.5 millimeters.
Mm-hmm.
I think, is that standard?
I am not the person to ask.
Okay. Well, I think that's what the Brother SE600 has the first stitch set at 2.5 milliliters. So I think that's a pretty standard stitch. It'll be nice and tight so none of your rice will slip out. And also, I know that I said if you're hand sewing, you can do 2 rows of stitches. Also, if you're using the machine, you can also do double stitches if you just want to make sure that you're not going to have any sort of issues with rice spilling out or leaking. Yeah, better safe than sorry. All right, so let me get this sewing. Make sure. Okay. And so my sweatshirt has a little bit of bulk at the end, and so you can kind of see where my stitch didn't go all the way over. If that's the case with your sweatshirt too, just start it at the opposite end and then go back to make sure that you get it all the way sealed up because we don't want any rice falling out. So I'm going to do another pass over my same stitch that I did just to make sure it goes all the way to the end so that we don't have any rice coming out. All right. So, got my nice straight stitch there, nice and sealed up. It goes all the way to the edges so that we have lots of security for our rice. Let me check, make sure there's no questions so far. Okay. So, now that we've got that closed up, I am going to flip it inside out. All right, and so there we go. There is the end of our little sweatshirt sleeve, all sealed up, ready to be filled with rice. All right, so the next step is going to be for you to decide how you want your heating pad to be configured. What you can do is one big section, just fill this up with rice and then seal it at the top. That's one option. You also have the option to make sections. So what I like to do, because I generally use these for cramps. So if I'm having cramps, I like to just lay it over. So what I am going to do is make my net, I'm going to fill it with rice, probably to, I'm going to like cut mine, not cut it, I'm going to separate it into thirds. So like this bottom, there you can see that. So this little bottom portion will be kind of small, and I'll put rice in that, and then I'll sew it shut. And then I'm going to have a bigger middle section. So the two end sections, I'm going to have two end sections and then a bigger middle so that it can lay and kind of hang really nicely. So that's how I'm going to configure mine, but you could also do yours as like 5 little mini sections or one big section or just 2 sections. If you maybe want it to go like over your neck, it might be nice to just have 2 sections. So depending on what you want to use it for, you can kind of decide how your sections are going to be. And again, it doesn't need to be exact. You don't need to measure. I like to play it fast and loose and just let the crafting spirits guide me. Okay, that is how we like to do it. So let me get my scoop. I've got a scoop just to make getting the rice easier. My bag o' rice. And I don't think there's like a special kind of rice you have to use. I use jasmine rice because I like that it smells nice. But any sort of rice will work. And what I'm going to do is I am just going to scoop, like this is a 1 cup scoop. So I probably will not end up using the whole 1 cup, but I'm going to fill it until, I'll show you, but I'm going to fill it until I feel like I have a good sized bottom section, which I think is going to end up being like 2 or 3 of these scoops that I have. But again, depending on how you're doing it, how you want your sizes to be, that's totally up to you. So I'm going to do 3 scoops and then I'll show you what it looks like. Okay. So I've got my 3 scoops in there. And you can see a little bit, kind of, it's starting to have a little weight, a little heft. And this is about how big I'm going to make that first section. So this is all filled up with the rice, and it's probably going to be, so I'm going to make my next stitch probably right here. So that's my first section that I'm going to have. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pin once again where I want to make my stitch. This time you're going to go ahead and make your stitch on the outside, because you don't want to have to deal with like flipping it inside out, so that you can hide the stitch perfectly fine to have the stitch be seen. If you do want something, if you are worried about the aesthetics of your heating pad, you can always use a matching thread. I'm just going to use plain white thread because it's not, I'm not worried about the optics of this. I'm not going to sell it. If I were selling them, or if I wanted them, to be like a nice gift or something, then yes, I might match the thread, use a little like use a sweatshirt that has maybe some color to it, if you're trying to make it a gift or something that you can sell. So again, I have my little pins in so that I know where I want my stitch to be. And I'm going to do the same single stitch, 2.5 milliliters, just going to do one line straight across, going to make sure that it goes from end to end. So then that way you don't have rice spilling out of one compartment into another. It all stays together. So I'll go ahead and sew that. Got to make sure all the rices, make sure all your rice is down at the bottom. So then it's not bunching up. All right. And I don't know if when you're sewing you do the back stitch, but I always do the back stitch at the ends at edges just to make sure that it's closed up and sealed up tight. So that's what I did here. I made sure that I did a back stitch to get it nice and sealed up all the way tight. And again, yeah, if you wanted to use a thread that matches so that it kind of blends in, you can see that it's really not that visible. Like you can see it, but it's not, because sweatshirts kind of have a little plushness, doesn't stick out too bad. So that is my first section that I have done. I think that if you are going to be like me and make your a 3-sectioned heating pad, that this is a really good size for this first one. Let me see. I thought I had my thing so I could measure about how many, but I think this is probably like 3 to 4, like a 3 to 4 inch section probably. But you could see it's not that long, but it's got some weight to it because of the rice. So then because I want 3 sections, I'm just going to do that 2 more times. I'm going to fill with rice. So this middle section, I'm probably going to do like 8 to 10 scoops, just because I want it to be nice and full, much bigger than the first one. So I think that, yeah, we're going to go ahead and I'll start filling up my sweatshirt with my middle section with the rice. Let's see how many scoops we take here. Let me double check my question.
So Angela, how big of a bag of rice did you buy to fill a sweatshirt sleeve?
Ooh. So I ended up getting a 5-pound bag. However, this is a big bag. And I'm not going to use all of it. So depending, I would say your standard, I don't know how many ounces the regular bags are. I think they're around 2 or 3 pounds. But I would say, like, if you're just doing this project, probably a 2 or 3 pound bag would work. Like the regular store size brand would be fine. If you're just doing one of these. And I guess too, if you are going to do, I guess it also depends on the size of your sweatshirt, but this is an extra large sweatshirt sleeve. So I guess if you maybe have one that's 2X, 3X, 4X, you might use a little more rice, but still, I think a 2 to 3 pound bag should be good. Because I don't even know how much of a dent I'm going to make in this 5-pound bag, but I just wanted to have enough extra just in case. And the great thing about rice is you can eat it if you don't use it. So if you want to buy more, you can, and then treat yourself to a rice dish.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to check and see what this section is looking like. And you also want to make sure that if you are doing the 3 sections, or really however many sections, you just want to make sure that you leave enough room at the top to sew your last section closed. And it actually should be pretty easy because depending on how if you use the seam ripper or scissors, you're gonna have a little, see how there's kind of a difference up here? There's almost like a little ridge, like a little natural ridge that happens from you cutting. So that's gonna be the perfect place to sew it shut. So just, yeah, make sure, keep an eye out, be sure to, how I'm doing, as you're filling it up with rice, make sure you're laying it down to see how it's gonna flatten. So like this is looking good, but I think I need maybe a couple more scoops because you want it to be nice and full. You don't want a flimsy little heating pad. I'm gonna do maybe one more scoop here. Oh, I'm spilling rice now. I was doing so good at not spilling rice, and now it's just going everywhere. Okay. So I think that this is a good amount for my next section, and I'll show you kind of how. So now you can kind of see, like, I have my one section here, and this is gonna be my middle section, my nice hefty middle section. And I'm gonna flatten out the rice just to make sure there's a good amount. That'll be dispersed. Yes, perfect. And again, I'm gonna pin. You can also, you don't have to pin. You can just kind of draw a line that you want to sew on as well. Like if you have your chalk, you can mark it with your chalk and do that as well. The pins are what I had right here, so that's what I'm using. But yes, feel free to use what you've got on hand. And the best part about this, especially if you're not sewing it, or giving it as a gift, is that even if you are giving it as a gift, it's so easy, so simple, straight stitch, really great for beginners because you're only doing a few stitches and they're going to be straight, no curving, nothing crazy happening. So this is a really great project for someone who's beginning to sew or someone who just is like wanting to make gifts for people this year or wanting to, just be helpful. This is something super simple you can do, and it upcycles. You can use any sweatshirt you've got. You could probably, even if you wanted to make like a giant heating pad, you could probably use a sweatpant leg as well. If you needed like a full body heating pad, do it. That's what's so nice about upcycling, is that you've got all these options and ways to use them. And sometimes it just takes a simple stitch and some rice to turn it into something super useful. So this is probably a good spot to pause and do our intermission, so that Dana can fill you in on other things. And if you need a drink or something, you can go grab that. And then, yeah, just a couple more quick stitches and we'll be done.
All right, fantastic. So I'm going to talk about upcoming classes and a special offer from our digital magazine. So we've got one class that you can sign up for right now, and that is on June 11th. It's 3 beautiful crochet stitches. I'll be teaching that class. You'll learn the boblet stitch, the bar stitch, and the honeycomb stitch, which I think all are very beautiful. And they're used in a baby blanket pattern, so you can see how that all looks put together. You can sign up for that at favecrafts.eventbrite.com. And I'm also going to drop the direct Zoom sign up link in the chat if you'd like to just sign up right at Zoom. And then we like to thank everybody who attends our classes with this special offer from our digital magazines. We Like Sewing is a completely digital magazine out of Prime Publishing, which owns Fave Crafts. And when you sign up for the digital magazine, not only do you get access to the 6 issues that are published each year, again, all digitally, but you also get access immediately to all of the back issues and previously published patterns. They're all, edited patterns, so you're getting an error-free product, and it's ads-free because it's a subscription. And when you sign up, if you're a new subscriber, you get all of that for just $5 US for 1 year. And the link to get that special offer is welikesewing.com/virtual24. And I will also put that in the chat and the video description when this goes on YouTube, etc. as well. And that's all that I've got. I will turn it right back over to Angela.
All right. So let's get our heating pad done. Oh, you know what? I do want to mention, if you are someone who is into essential oils or herbs, herbal remedies, that's another thing that you could put in here with the rice. So if you know that you're always going to use this at night to be soothing, calming, relaxing, you could go ahead and put some lavender, a few drops of lavender essential oil in with your rice, or chamomile, or a sleepy time, essential oil blend. Sprinkle a couple of drops of that on your rice. And then when you heat it up, it'll be really like fragrant. It'll help release some of those aromas. You also put in dry lavender or dried chamomile, rose, any kind of herbs that might be fragrant, might be helpful to relaxing or pain relief. Those can also get put into heating pad. So then you can add like a little extra fanciness, a little extra layer of soothing, healing, hopefulness. So yay for plants and herbs. All right, so now we can go ahead and we will sew up this middle section. Again, straight, simple stitch. And I am going to do the back stitch, and I'm going to make sure you go all the way to the edge so that we don't have rice flying out and falling all over. All right. So I got that stitch. Oh, this stitch is much straighter than my last one. I really did great on this one. My first one, you can see it's good. My first one's like a little wavy, but this one, I was on it, like straight as an arrow. Yes. So once you get your stitches done, I'm just snipping off the little extra bits. Okay. So now I've got my two heating pad sections done, and I'm just going to fill up this last one. And this is the hardest one to fill. So what I like to do is make sure that it's all the way open and a little flat. Like, see, I kind of have it laid down and flat. So then I don't have to worry about things like falling over. And I'm just very carefully going to scoop in into more rice. Okay. So that was 2 scoops. That is probably like a nice full cup, but let's see and check. Okay, we could put a little more. So because it's a little slanted, you can kind of add, like if you're adding it, add it so that the big part kind of, so then you don't have to worry about falling out. Make sure that when you're adding the rice in, it's going towards the side that's slanted. Because I think I'm pretty all of the sweatshirt sleeves are going to have a little bit of a slant just because that's how sleeves are. So there will be a little more room in this one. I think I'll add one more scoop just to be sure. One scoop. And again, you can play with the amount. There's no like 1/3 of a cup or 1 cup scoops, because everyone can make different sections, their own size, kind of do it their own way. You can play with how many scoops you put in, how much rice you use. But I do think that for this last section, this is a good amount. And again, I'm just going to kind of line up these edges and do some pinning to make sure that they stay. I want it to be kind of lined up nice so that it stays looking good. Right there. All right, so I'm gonna do my pins. All right, and so I'm just gonna make one last stitch to close it right across the top. And I might even do 2 just be, I want to make sure that it doesn't bust open or nothing falls out. So I'm going to start with 1 stitch, and then we may do another one as well, just to be sure. We're going to make sure all that rice is down in there. Make sure all my rice is down. Yep. So I'm going to go back over the stitch that I made. And it doesn't, I mean, again, you don't have to go directly over the stitch that you made. It can be, close to it, next to it, but just so that you have that extra bit of protection to make sure that we don't have any rice falling out. All right. And there we have it. Look at that. We made our little 3-piece heating pad ready to go. Gosh, I love how jasmine rice smells. I'm like over here. Oh, it's already so fragrant. Who needs herbs in there when you've got jasmine rice, right? But yeah, there we go. And you can see, like, because that middle section is a little bit bigger, it's gonna lay perfectly over a, sore tummy or back or neck or anything. Easy peasy. There we go. All done. You did it. You sewed a heating pad from a sweatshirt sleeve. And because, sweatshirts have 2 sleeves, you can at least do 2. Maybe more if you want to. But yeah, easy peasy, simple craft. That's kind of what Highly Crafty is all about. Just using what you've got in your house to make easy crafts that are actually useful, not something that, you're not ever going to use, because the heating pad will get used. So there you go. Thank you so much for joining me.
One question that came to mind is, how long do you put it in the microwave for?
Oh, so I normally do a minute, like 60 seconds, 1 minute. And that's usually good. I think if you have a bigger one or maybe more rice, you might want to do like 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes. But yeah, usually a minute is a good amount of time.
Awesome. Okay. I don't see any more questions coming in as of right now. So we'll give it a second. I will.
Yeah.
I've put a bunch of information in the chat so folks can visit Highly Crafty. And yeah, I'll share my screen again. So folks can see. We've got, if you're not following Angie on her different social media, you can find her on YouTube, on Instagram and Pinterest at Highly Crafty. Instagram is highly.crafty.
Yes.
Yeah, and visit highlycrafty.com for more DIY tutorials. And let me move my little window here so you can see. Yeah, visit Highly Crafty. I am not seeing any other chats or Q&A coming in, so
yeah, pretty self-explanatory, simple craft. That's kind of what I like too, is simple crafts.
yes, like beginner friendly is great. So
yeah,
there was one person who said that they're new to sewing, so hopefully this is a really fun beginner friendly sewing tutorial, like low barrier to entry.
Exactly. Straight stitch, that's all you got to know.
Yeah, I've never used, well, actually I've used a sewing machine I think one time, and so I'm like, okay, this seems like something I could do.
Yeah, something that everyone can tackle. That's what I like, is when people are like, I don't know, I'm not a crafter, I can't do that. And I'm like, oh yes, you could do this. Like, I like to make it very simple.
Great. All right. Well, thank you again so much for joining today.
Thank you for having me. This was great. So much fun.
Yay, lovely. Oh, fantastic. All right. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you everybody for joining, and we'll send out that recording tomorrow.
Sounds good. Bye.
Thanks, Angela.